نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه ومن اختفى أثره واستنى بسنته إلى يوم الدين. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما إلى علمنا ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. Inshallah, we'll continue with the book known as the Musannaf of Ibn Abi Shaybah, rahimahullah ta'ala. The Musannaf of Abu Bakr Abdullah ibn Muhammad ibn Abi Shaybah, who died in the year 235 after the Hijrah. And we are in the book Kitab al-Tahara, the book that deals with purification. The chapter where the author, he says, those who used to not make wudu or rinse out their mouth because of milk. In the previous section, the author, rahimahullah ta'ala, he covered those who used to say that it is preferable or maybe even necessary to wash out one's mouth, if not make wudu, because of the consumption of milk. And we mentioned the statement of a large amount of the Salaf as it related to the preferability of rinsing out the mouth because of drinking milk. And we also mentioned the statement of Abu Sa'id al-Khudri and Abi Hurairah radiyallahu ta'ala anhuma as it related to making wudu because of drinking milk. And we talked about the reason behind this was the greasy, fatty nature of milk and what it leaves behind in the mouth. And how this was in some ways connected to the obligation previously of making a wudu because of that which the fire touched. And so it was a comparable scenario. Anything that left this greasy, fatty, filmy residue in the mouth or on the hands, then this would be something that in the earlier stages of Islam, the Muslims were commanded to make wudu because of this. And we talked about it being potentially because of the sake of hygiene and how that was something that needed to be instilled in the people. And then when it became instilled in the people, the obligation was removed with the preferability remaining. And one of the things to consider, like when we talk about these reasonings and these justifications behind certain legislation, and this is something that the young Salafi can sometimes disregard and overlook, and that is in understanding the wisdoms behind the legislation and the reasons. It's important because it helps you to apply the intent of the religion in contemporary issues. When they talk about nawazil and when they talk about the field of maqasid al-shari'iyah, the legislative intent and things like this, a lot of times we find ourselves in front of situations where, we're kind of, forced to make a determination where there might not be any clear, unambiguous text. And making such a determination can often rely on, how much an individual is aware of the goal of the Sharia and the intent of the Sharia to be able to practically apply those legislations in their contemporary situation. And this is something that a lot of times, an individual can overlook. And, this is even something that happened classically. When you talk about the Zahiri madhab and you talk about the people of Hadith, how some of them found themselves in circumstances with the people of Ra'i. And this is, particularly before the authoring of Ash-Shafi'i to his book Ar-Risala. And so when we talk about like understanding, okay, is the affair to make wudu or to wash one's mouth out because of drinking milk, yes or no? That affair in and of itself might be something that is simple or straightforward. And, nobody says it's obligatory for the most part. If anybody, preferability is what it is, but understanding the reason why is what allows you to function better as somebody who has to navigate the religion, whether for themselves or for others, to be able to give better advice, better reasoning, better wisdom, because you understand to a better extent why Allah legislated such things, and you understand the history of it. And so in understanding why making wudu because of something that the fire touched, or making wudu because of milk, or washing the mouth out because of milk, and the history of hygiene and the religion and purity being half of Iman, and how the legislation alleviated such stringent rules that might have been applicable early on in Islam when those things became more commonplace. It helps a person understand, different aspects of their life, right? When it comes to doing istinja, when it comes to doing, regular hygiene affairs, trimming the mustache, clipping the underarm, or plucking the underarm, trimming the pubic region. All of these type of things, when you understand the reason why behind the legislation, it makes it, much simpler to navigate, and it allows the person to act with a greater sense of ikhlas in their action, without the sense of burden and undue strain that some people find themselves in when they try to apply the religion in a nonsensical way. And I don't want to have my statements misconstrued to believe that, the sense is what applies to the religion. If the religion was because of, what quote unquote is sensible, then the bottom of the khuf would have more right to be wiped over it than the top. But Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu, he said he saw that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam wiped over the tops of his leather socks. But the point is that in spite of the fact that the religion is the determining factor, the legislation, understanding the reasons help an individual navigate it in a sensible manner and apply it practically. Because that's what a lot of people suffer from, is this extremism in the religion when it comes to application. And it can be, something as large as extremism as it relates to the rulers and affairs of Islam and disbelief, or it can be something as simple as the affair of, cleaning oneself after using the toilet, and to what extent does it need to be done, and to what, level is it necessary, right? Do you have to take 2 ghusls on Jum'ah, one for Jum'ah and one for the removal of hadith, if you had sexual relationships with your family the night before, right? How to apply these things in a sensible, practical way by understanding the wisdom behind the legislator, or the wisdom of the legislator in such a regard. Anyway, we digress. The point of it is that the previous chapter was about those who say to make wudu from drinking milk. Those who say drinking milk, if somebody, chapter regarding one who drinks milk, and those who say he should make wudu. This chapter in front of us is the opposite of that, right? Those who say drinking milk doesn't necessitate a wudu or even a rinsing out of the mouth. And when you understand the wisdoms and the legislation, the wisdoms behind the legislation, one of the biggest benefits of it is you're no longer at odds when you see these difference of opinions, right? It's not, well, how do we gather between them, or, who's right, who's wrong? Because you understand that, okay, this one is speaking from this aspect, and this one is speaking from a completely different aspect. And so it removes some of the difficulty that some of the students might have. Well, who's right, who's wrong in this issue? And so this chapter is going to be the completely opposite opinion, but we're going to see that there's not any contradiction between the two. And so this chapter is those who say there's no wudu necessary because of it, nor is there a need to rinse the mouth. There's no wudu necessary because of drinking milk, nor is there a need to rinse the mouth. Abu Bakr ibn Abi Shayba, he says, أخبرنا ابن علي عن أيوب عن ابن سيرين أنه قال أنبئت أن ابن عباس رضي الله تعالى عنهما شرب لبنا فذكروا له الوضوء والمضمضة قال لا أباليه بالا اسمح يسمح لك. And this is exactly what we were talking about that sensible approach to the religion, right? Understanding the reasons behind and how it allows you to navigate the applying of the legislation. Ibn Abi Shayba, he said that Ibn Ulayya narrated, informed us on the authority of Ayyub, on the authority of Ibn Sirin, who said that I was told about Ibn Abbas that he once drunk some milk. And so they mentioned to him making wudu and making madmada. And like we said, this is something that supports that there was a position classically, historically, that somebody should make wudu because of drinking milk. And so, like when you look at the explanations of the Sunan of Abi Dawood, for example, those that I was able to come across, a lot of the popular explanations that are in front of us nowadays. He has a chapter like Ibn Abi Shayba, chapter about making wudu because of drinking milk. And the majority of the people who explain it, they explain it according to the hadith that he brings in the chapter about rinsing the mouth out. And it's as if they're interpreting the word making wudu to be rinsing the mouth out. But when you see narrations like this, where they kind of separate between the two realities, and a chapter like this, the Musannaf, where he separates between the two realities, it's meant to indicate that there was possibly a classical opinion that people once held that you should make wudu for drinking milk. And so even if that's not something that is an actionable opinion in today's day and age, meaning that the scholars of Islam have kind of come together to move away from the validity of such an opinion, it shows that there were people who held that opinion. Because when Ibn Abbas drank this milk, people mentioned to him about making wudu and making madmada. Aren't you going to make wudu? Are you going to rinse your mouth out at least? And so they're presenting to him, why aren't you making wudu? Why aren't you going to make madmada? Right? You're Ibn Abbas. We've heard from other people that this is a sunnah to make wudu after drinking milk, or to at least rinse your mouth out after drinking milk. And here you are, Ibn Abbas. Why aren't you going to do it? And so Ibn Abbas, radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, he said to those who mentioned it, La ubalihi bala. I don't care about it at all. I don't care anything about making wudu or making madmada after drinking milk. La ubalihi bala. I don't give it one bit of concern. Right? I'm not concerned about it in the least. Right? This topic of making wudu because of milk, or making madmada, rinsing my mouth out because of milk, I don't care anything about that opinion. Meaning there's no necessity to do so. It's not something that I get worried about, man, is my salat going to be accepted or not? I didn't rinse my mouth out. Oh, I didn't make wudu. Oh, subhanAllah, is my worship going to be invalidated? No, I don't care about it at all. I don't lose any concern, or I don't give any concern over it. And then he said, Ismah yusmah lak. Be tolerant. And tolerance will be given to you, or shown to you. And that's the key right there. Avoid this extremism in applying the religion. Be tolerant, and tolerance will be shown to you. Right? Sometimes we hear some narrations, like we said, we have to understand like why the Salaf said certain things. Right? Did they think that wudu was necessary, or did they say, like I often mention from my statement, is it the fact of, well, if I'm going to rinse my mouth out, if I'm going to wash my hands, then the only thing left is to wipe my head and wash my feet. I might as well make a wudu. Or was it a legislated act of worship in this circumstance? And so Ibn Abbas is saying to them, be tolerant, right? Don't have this extremism that you all are showing in the religion, and tolerance will be shown to you. Allah won't take harsh and hard and difficult positions against you on the day of judgment. The small mistakes you make, the inaccuracies that you fall into, right? If we're going to be this extra and this overzealous as it comes to holding other people to account, then are we not worried that Allah might show us the same type of response on the day of judgment? And this is not to say that one should be lazy and negligent about how they approach the religion, right? Because this was not the way of the Sahaba. They detailed all of these little actions of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam because of how concerned they were with how he did things. They noticed where his fingers were in ruku' and how he had them, right? How his arms were in sujood, how his stomach and his thighs, what position were they in sujood. And so these are things that we should pay attention to as well. But when there's no clear evidence and it's nothing, authentic to support it, then we don't have to go to these extremes that we find people going to in their religion. We don't need to give a 5-minute window before fasting. We don't need to be as, severe as, some people might find themselves. Just worship Allah to the best of your ability and be tolerant. And tolerance will be shown to you. Allahu a'lam. The next narration, he says, حدثنا وكيع عن قرة بن خالد أن يزيد عن أبيه أو أن يزيد عن أخيه مطرف ابن الشخير أنه قال شربت لبنا محضا بعدما توضأت فسألت ابن عباس رضي الله تعالى عنه فقال ما أباليه باله اسمح يسمح لك. He says that Waki' narrated to us on the authority of Qurrah ibn Khalid, on the authority of Yazid, on the authority of his brother, Mutarraf ibn al-Shikhir, who said, I drank some pure milk, Lebanon mahla. And this is important, right? Somebody might ask the questions, well, what about creamers? What about, ice cream? What about, different things that might have a milk base, but have been mixed with other things? If I held the opinion that, I should wash my mouth out or I should make wudu because of milk, does this milk, when it's diluted and mixed with other substances, does it still count? Here, Mutarraf ibn al-Shikhir, he said, I drank pure milk. So if this ruling that we're about to get is regarding pure milk, then diluted milk and mixed milk is even more suitable for such a ruling. So Ibn al-Shikhir, he said, I had drunk pure milk once after I made wudu, right? And this is something else that supports for us that the position was to make a wudu, and that the word wudu in this context was not about rinsing the mouth out. So Ibn al-Shikhir, he said, I had drunk pure milk once after making wudu. And so I asked Ibn Abbas about it, and he said, I don't care that much about it. I don't give it one bit of concern. Be tolerant. Tolerance will be given to you. And so the similar narration, right? Don't be excessive in your religion. Don't be extreme. Don't try to apply certain things to yourself in a harsh and, unbinding way, right? Know that, okay, why the religion legislated it. And in that circumstance, is it wajib to be implemented in this situation? Or is there room? Is there tolerance? Is there grace that is given for somebody who was unable to execute it in a certain circumstance? Ibn Abi Shayba, he says, حدثنا وكيع عن مالك بن مغول عن طلحة أنه قال سألت أبا عبد الرحمن عن الوضوء من اللبن قال من شراب سائغ للشاربين. The question is what Abu Abdul Rahman is this? Is it Ibn Mas'ud or is it Ibn Umar? I don't know. He says that Abu Bakr ibn Abi Shayba, he says that Waki' narrated to us on the authority of Malik ibn Mighwal, on the authority of Talha, on the authority of Abu Abdul Rahman regarding wudu because of milk. To which Abu Abdul Rahman, he said, should you make wudu from a pure or from a good, enjoyable, pure liquid for those who consume it? Right? What kind of wudu do you need to make because you drunk something wholesome and good and delicious for those who drink it? Right? Kind of disapproving of his statement. I want to say this is, I don't know. It's either Ibn Umar or Ibn Mas'ud. Let's see if we can figure out. So how would you figure out in this circumstance? This is a tangent, but we don't have a lot today, so we can, do a little investigation. We see the narrators. We have Waki'. We already know who he is. Waki' ibn al-Jarrah. So we have a starting point on Malik ibn Mighwal, and we know who he is because it has his name and his father's name. And then we have an individual named Talha, but this Talha is muhmal. He is unspecified, right? He's unregulated. We don't know Talha who. Which Talha could he be? And he's narrating on somebody who goes by their kunya, Abu Abdul Rahman. And so he is also unspecified. We don't know exactly which Abu Abdurrahman this is. So when you come across a narration like this where you don't know who certain people are in the chain, what do? You look at the people you do know. So we go to Malik ibn Mighwal because he's the furthest back person that we know. And this is where a book like Tahdhib al-Kamal becomes more important than Tahdhib al-Tahdhib. Because Tahdhib al-Kamal, remember, Mizzi's, one of his agendas was to try to mention all of a person's teachers. So Malik ibn Mighwal was a famous scholar. So when we go to his biography in Tahdhib al-Kamal, and we can find his biography in Tahdhib al-Kamal, we then look at his teachers. So you have Malik ibn Mighwal al-Bajali, Abu Abdullah al-Kufi. And he was Malik ibn Mighwal ibn Asim ibn Gharba ibn Huratha, to the end of what they mention. And then he mentions his teachers. So from his teachers, we're going to look for somebody named Talha and see, did he have multiple teachers named Talha, or did he only have one or two teachers named Talha? And so when we look at his biography in Al-Mizzi and Tahdhib al-Kamal, he usually mentions them in alphabetical order. So it makes it easy for you to search through his teachers. Lillahi darr salaf. To Allah belongs the milk that the Salaf were raised upon. Because look at these are like computers, right? The intellect and the mind that these individuals had on them to write these books that do the work of computers nowadays. And this just goes to show you the effort that was put into preserving this religion. Before there was AI, you had people like Al-Mizzi and Ibn Hajar, and before them Al-Maqdisi, who wrote these books for us to benefit from. So when we're looking through this individual's biography, we're looking for Talha. And so we see from the people that he narrated upon was Al-Harith and Hussein and Al-Hakam. And we jump down, we got Asim and Abdul Rahman. And we got Qais, but the Ta comes after that. We have Muqatil, we have Mansur, and we have Nafi', and then they mention Walid, and then they mention, okay. And so they don't mention any Talha here from the teachers of Ibn Mighwal in Tahdhib al-Kamal. And that's not uncommon because this is not Kutub al-Sitta. And so it's not uncommon that maybe the person that he's narrating on isn't somebody that Al-Mizzi mentions, because one, it's not necessary that he mention all of his teachers, and then two, maybe this is somebody that he doesn't narrate on often. And then the third possibility is it could be a mistake. There could be a missing person in the chain, or this could be a situation of irsal or something like that. And so we gotta, kind of work in multiple directions. But as far as I found him, Talha ibn Musarraf. Musarraf. Talha ibn Musarraf. I just overlooked him. Talha ibn Musarraf. So Al-Mizzi does mention him. Talha ibn Musarraf. Yeah, I don't know why I thought the Ta was after the meme. Yeah, Talha ibn Musarraf. And so we go to his biography. And now when we go to the biography of Talha ibn Musarraf, we're looking to see which of his teachers would have been famous by the kunya of Abu Abdurrahman. Talha ibn Musarraf. So we go to Tahdhib al-Kamal, and Talha ibn Musarraf, what generation was he from? He was from the Khamisa. So he would have been from the very small tabi'een or the very old atba' tabi'een, like the generation of Imam Malik, the tweeners, right? He would have been from the tweeners. Maybe he was a tabi'i, but more likely he was a tabi'i. That's the mustawa al-khamis, or al-khamis, al-tabaqat al-khamisa, right? And so automatically, right, when we say he asked Abu Abdurrahman if he is from the 5th generation, being somebody who died in the year 200, I'm sorry, ithnatay ashar, or ba'daha. When we look at his teachers, Talha ibn Musarraf from his teachers that he narrated upon was Anas ibn Malik and Khaythama. So he did reach Anas, and that's in Bukhari, Muslim, and in Nasa'i. Sa'id ibn Jubair. So these are Sa'id ibn Abdul Rahman ibn Aswaj, Hudayl, Mus'ab ibn. So he only reached Anas, they say, from the Sahabas, what it's looking like. So we're looking for somebody who would have been known as Abu Abdurrahman from his prominent teachers, or maybe not. But he said he asked him. So it won't be Ibn Umar or Ibn Mas'ud. So we got Rawa and Al-Aghar, Abi Muslim, wa Anas ibn Malik, and Khaythama ibn Abdurrahman, and Dhar ibn Abdullah al-Hamdani, and Dhakwan Abu Salihin, As-Samman, wa Zayd ibn Wahab, wa Sa'id ibn Jubair, wa Sa'id ibn Abdurrahman, ibn Abdullah ibn Abza, wa Abdullah ibn Abi Awfa, wa Abdurrahman ibn Awsaja, wa Abi Maysara Amr ibn Shurahbil, wa Umayrat ibn Sa'ad, wa Mujahid ibn Jabr, ومرة الشراحيل الطيب وأبي مصرف إن كان محفوظا ومصعب بن سعد بن أبي وقاص وهذيل بن شرحبيل ويحيى بن سعيد الأنصاري وهو من أقرانه وأبي بردة بن أبي موسى الأشعري. And so there, they don't mention any of them by the kunya. So what you would have to do is start going through this or read the biography of this individual to see some of the people that he narrated on in abundance. He says, I witnessed Aba Ishaq. Okay. And Shu'bah fi ما ترك بعده مثله قال عبد الله مجاهد الأزم أحد طلحة ابن مصرف قال عبد الله ما رأيت أعمش يثني على أحد أدركه إلا طلحة بن مصرف كان يسمونه سيد القراء طلحة بن مصرف لولاتي أني على وضوء لحدثتكم بما يقول الرافضة كان عثمان يفضل عثمان على علي وكان من أقرأ أهل الكوفة قال عبد الرحمن بن عبد الملك بن أبجر رأيت طلحة بن مصرف ما رأيت. So they don't mention anything in here about any specific details about his teachers. That's when you would go to Tahdhib al-Kamal, Tahdhib al-Tahdhib, and see who he mentions, who Ibn Hajar mentions as some of his teachers. Anas ibn Abdullah, Anas wa Abdullah ibn Abi Awfa, wa Qurrat ibn Sharahil, wa Khaytham ibn Abdul Rahman, wa Zayd ibn Wahab, wa Abu Salih, and As-Samman, wa Sa'id ibn Jubair, wa Sa'id ibn Abdul Rahman ibn Abi Abza. So I'd have to look, when you get to a spot like this, you would have to just go through these individuals and then see how many of them are named, how many of their kunyas were Abu Abdurrahman, for example. Like if we looked at Mujahid, just taking somebody who's famous from them, Mujahid ibn Jabr, Mujahid ibn Jabr, his kunya is Abu al-Hajjaj, so it's not Mujahid. Is it Sa'id ibn Jubair? I thought Sa'id was Abu Abdullah ibn Jubair. That might be who it is. Because the reason I'm selecting these people, and I know we're way off topic, but the reason I'm selecting somebody like Sa'id ibn Jubair is because he's somebody who's famous, who would have had lots of opinions. And so you would start with personalities like that who have lots of opinions. Abu Muhammad. So it's not Sa'id ibn Jubair. Who else did they mention? And you would go through those personalities to see which one would most likely be the person that he's narrating on here. And then nowadays with computers, an easy way you could do it as well is to see, right, in the Musannaf of Abdul Razak, Sharabin Sa'irin. So you would look up the word of the hadith, Sharabin Sa'irin, and see who else narrated it and who did they narrate it on. Maybe they clarify some of the unclarified people. Sharabun Sa'irin. Why is it? Oh, I'm in the wrong book. Okay, Sharabun Sa'irin. Right now, I'm just in a tangent because I want to know now. Sharabun Sa'irin. And it's only in the Musannaf with this wordage. سألت أبا عبد الرحمن طلحة قال سألت عبد الرحمن عن الوضوء. Yeah, so I'd have to research. Let's see in the footnotes. Now that we've kind of given up, obviously the footnotes don't mention anybody, so you would have to go through and do your research. But this is why it's so important to every time you come across somebody, kind of familiarize yourself with who they are, because it doesn't suit a student that you're reading a narration and you come across a name and you've never heard of it, or you don't know how to figure out who the person is. So I got to figure out who this is. I'll do that later on my own time. But in this narration, as we mentioned, he says that Abu Bakr, he says that Waki' narrated to us on Malik ibn Mighwal on Talha, who said, I asked Aba Abdul Rahman about making wudu because of milk. And he said, from a pure and good drink for those who consume it, I know you don't have to make wudu because of that. He says, حدثنا وكيع عن مسعر قال قلت لجبلة أسمعت ابن عمر يقول إني لا آكل اللحم وأشرب اللبن وأصلي ولا أتوضأ قال نعم. Waki', he said, Abu Bakr, he said that Waki' narrated to us on the authority of Mis'ar, who said that I said to Jabala, did you hear Ibn Umar saying, indeed I eat meat and drink milk and I make salat and I don't make wudu? To which Jabala replied, yes, I've heard him say that. All right, so this shows us, one, that it wasn't wajib according to Ibn Umar, and then two, the concept or the conversation is actually about a wudu and not just rinsing out the mouth. The next narration, the last one in this chapter, he says that حدثنا محمد ابن فضيل عن عطاء ابن السائب أنه قال كان أبو عبد الرحمن في المسجد فأتاه مدركة بن عمارة بلبن فشربه فقال مدرك هذا ماء فمضمض قال من أي شيء من السائغ الطيب. And so here we have another narration where it mentions Abu Abdurrahman again, but this time one of his students is Mudrik. So if we look up who is Mudrik, because that's somebody else who I don't know. Mudrik. Well, first let's read the narration. He says that first he says that Muhammad ibn Fudayl narrated to us on the authority of Ata ibn Sa'ib, who said that Abu Abdurrahman was in the masjid and Mudrik ibn Umara came or brought him some milk, and so he drunk from it. And then Mudrik said to him, here goes some water for you to rinse your mouth out. To which Abu Abdurrahman responded, from what? A wholesome, good drink? Why would I wipe my mouth out from a wholesome, good drink? And so we have Mudrik ibn Umara. Right? He's not from the people that are in the 6 books, but you can find him in Al-Ikmal fi dhikri man lahu riwayatun fi Musnad Ahmed. So he is somebody that is in the Musnad of Imam Ahmed. His name is Mudrik ibn Umara ibn Uqbah ibn Abi Mu'ayt al-Qurashi. He narrated on his father as-Sabi'i, and he narrated on Umara, who narrated, I want to say that's Abu Ishaq as-Sabi'i, that his father narrated on Abu Ishaq as-Sabi'i. Likewise, he narrated on Layth ibn Abi Sulaim, as well as other than them. And he was mentioned by Ibn Hibban in the book Al-Thiqat, and he was considered to be from amongst the people of Kufa. وَذَكَرَ أَنَّ لَهُ صُحْبَةً. Well, that seems like it's out of place to say that he had companionship if these are the Al-Umawi rawa an abihi wa lahu suhbah. So if this is Mudrika, and they're saying, if you look in the book Ta'jil al-Manfa'a, it says that Mudrika ibn Umar ibn Uqba ibn Abi Mu'ayt al-Umawi, he narrated on his father Umar ibn Uqba, and it said that Mudrika had companionship as well, and he narrated on Abdullah. So that would be Abdullah ibn Mas'ud in that context, right? Abdullah ibn Mas'ud in that context would be the Abu Abdurrahman that's being referred to there. Abdullah ibn Mas'ud. And so now that we see that it's a statement similar, the question goes back to this Talha, because Talha, it doesn't seem that he narrated on Ibn Mas'ud. And so let's go back and let's look at it a different way. Let's see, did Abdullah ibn Mas'ud have a student named Talha? Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, Tahdhib al-Kamal. And now somebody like Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, he's going to have a lot of students, right? So you want to go to the people that narrated on him. You got Hajjaj, Al-Rabi', Sa'ad, Abu Sa'id, Abu Wa'il, Abu Umama, Amir, Tariq, Wasila ibn Zufr al-Abasi, wa Tariq ibn Shihab al-Ahmasi, wa Amir. So it doesn't look like there's anybody named Talha amongst his students. And so here, when we look at this, if we're going to assume that it's the same Abu Abdurrahman, then either Talha is a mistake here or is somebody missing in the chain, which is always something you have to worry about, especially in books that aren't as well preserved as Kutub al-Sitta, right? Like something like the Musannaf, you have to be concerned about is the print that you have. Did they miss a word? Did they miss a name? Did they mistype a name? Right? And so we have this supporting narration here from Abdullah ibn Mas'ud. So we go, for example, and look at Ata ibn as-Sa'ib. Ata ibn as-Sa'ib. And Ata ibn as-Sa'ib, Abu Muhammad, Kufiyun Saduqun Ikhtarat min al-Khamisa, right? So he's from that same generation as Talha ibn Mutarrif. But here he didn't say, I heard, right? He's just telling us the story about Abu Abdurrahman and Mudrika, right? He died in the year 136. And so the likelihood of him reaching Abdullah is improbable, because Abdullah bin Mas'ud, he died early, right? He died, 32, if I'm not mistaken? If that late, he might have, 32, if I'm not mistaken, 32, 34. If not 18, but I don't think I think that was Mu'adh bin Jabal that died in the 18s. And so we're looking at this narration with Talha seems to be problematic. Let me see something now. And then, alhamdulillah, this is where we give up and we go to see what just people said. Sa'altu Aba Abdurrahman and al-wudu'i min al-laban, and al-wudu' min al-laban. Okay, and so we look at ad-durr as-sunniyah, Abdullah ibn Abbas, and the Nabi shariba labinan fada'a bima. So that's not the narration. أن رسول الله شرب ماء, that's not the narration. هذه يتناول, this doesn't have the narration that we're looking for in it. This doesn't have the narration that we're looking for in it. You're just trying to see somebody who narrates this narration. And this is where you see, like, some of the things you come across, like Google isn't as smart as you think, because when you try to Google something that's obscure, they're often going to just take you to the more obvious answers. So a lot of the conversation is going to be about wudu because of camel's milk, which is not our topic right now. And so you would have to see, right? I'm gonna definitely have to research this later, because now it's interesting. Because like I thought in the beginning, this seems like it would be a statement of somebody like Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, which it is down here in the final version. But Talha is where the problem is coming, because he says, I asked Abu Abdurrahman, and that would be problematic, because Talha, he died in 122. He wouldn't have reached Ibn Mas'ud. In any circumstance, I'm gonna go do my research now because I'm interested. But the topic is what it is. Those who used to not say wudu was necessary because of it, nor do you need to make madmadah, Those are the narrations that we mentioned in this chapter. We'll stop at this amount. هذا وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على عبده ورسوله نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. For anyone interested, inshallah, hopefully by the time you see this, I'll have it posted in the comments, the details about these two chains. Because another thing too is that the verifier of this book, Sheikh Asad al-Shithri, he doesn't mention anything about these two narrations, right? These two narrations, there's no comment, there's no grading of them, right? The one from Mudrik is a little bit more obvious, but the one from Malik ibn Mighwal and Talha on Abi Abdurrahman, that's problematic. So I'm gonna have to go do my research. I'm interested now. هذا وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على عبده ورسوله نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.